How's it going tonight? I like towards the end of Acts, when Paul's been on that ship. You remember he's en route to Rome to stand trial before Caesar. And the ship, trying to make its way on land through a little inlet, crashes, breaks up, and the prisoners have to swim to the shore, some on floating boards. But they make it to shore. You know, I'm thinking about Paul, and if anybody had a right to want to give up, to throw in the towel and say, you know, Lord, this ain't working out, it could have been the Apostle Paul. He had been through a lot, to say the least, up until that point. And he gets on the island, and you remember the story. He's working with the fire, and a viper fastens itself to Paul's hand. The indigenous people of the island said, surely this man's a sinner. Look, he survived the crash, yet now God's going to judge him. But the Apostle Paul shook it off. He had a promise from the risen Lord that he was going to make it to Rome. And then, after that, a leader of the island gets sick, and Paul goes to lay hands on him, and the leader's healed. And then Paul has the opportunity to testify, to speak of the Lord Christ. If Paul would have been all wrapped up in himself and focusing on everything he's been through, then he wouldn't have seen these opportunities the Lord had laid open for him in his providence. No, Paul went and used every time he could to testify of his Lord. And then it said the people, the indigenous people of the island, the barbarians, as it says, laden them with goods. They loaded them up with stuff, supplies that they undoubtedly desperately needed, things to refresh them, food they probably wanted, and it worked out. Paul, not focused on himself, but looking for chances to speak of the Lord. And as the scriptures teach you and me, that when we honor the Lord, he'll honor us. When we draw near to God, he'll draw near to us. What a reminder, and I'm so guilty of this, of getting our minds, our senses, ourself off of ourself and on to the mission at hand. We can do that because the Lord Christ did it. He was a man of sorrows. We esteemed him stricken, smitten of God, and yet for the joy that was laid up before him, the joy of the cross, the joy of the resurrection, the joy of being exalted to the right hand of the Father, he endured the cross. He endured the pain. And then he rose from the grave and sat down at the right hand of the living God. May this be a reminder to you and me, because of the resurrection, because of our Lord's perseverance, by his Spirit and by his power, I also can persevere and put him first because he saved me. Have a blessed day or a blessed night, wherever you are.